And to our next presentation and speaker. This is titled Using Kleros and Reality.eth to answer any question on chain. Sounds both creative, mysterious, and quite fascinating. I'd like to warmly introduce Clément Lesaege, co-founder of Kleros.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to talk about how we can use Reality.eth, well, we have the founder there, and Kleros to answer any kind of question. So who will win the US presidential election? Will there be more than 1,000 people dying of COVID in the US in the 14 days of July? When will the Ethereum merge happen? How much will Alex Thunder scam in total? Like, you can ask any sort of questions, and you can have contracts consuming those answers. So for the first two questions, Reality and Kleros already answered that Biden won the election and that there has been more than 1,000 people reported dead from COVID. You can also have more complex questions that you will not really see as classic question. Here, it's linked to governance. It's about verifying that some snapshot proposal actually passed to have it executed. So the possibilities are endless. You can really ask anything in plain text as long as someone can get public information to answer this. It can be asked on Reality. So the tech stack, so you have questionnaires, application which will ask questions and consume the answers. So you have example of Crypto Unlocked, which is a proof of impact fundraising platform, where they will ask was some project completed successfully to unlock funds. You have conditional tokens, which allow you to make some token, which can be redeemed for an underlying depending of the answer of a question. You have Omen, a prediction market using that. And now we just had Prod, which released a few weeks before, I guess, which is a sport betting platform, like physical and e-sport betting. So now then you have the Oracle, which is a Reality, where you can ask a question and get the answers. And what you can also have is an arbitrator, in our case, Kleros, but you can have any sort of arbitrator. It could be a single person, it could be any sort of DAO, and here we're going to go with Kleros as a DAO to solve dispute in those questions. So how does it work? You have someone, most of the time something, asking a question. For example, a prediction market, who will win the US election. And now that we know that Biden won the election, Alice is going to put a small deposit answering Biden. Most of the time, that's going to be it. No one will complain. You have a timeout. No one complained during a timeout. So the answer is considered final, and Alice gets back her deposit. But obviously, it doesn't work that way all the time. And here we have another party, Bob, who thinks that Trump won. He can put a deposit on Trump, and he has to double the deposit. And you can have this escalation gain, which can continue a bit. In this case, the Biden side can also put more deposit. It doesn't need to be by only one person. You may have different person putting deposit at a different time. And here, again, if no one complains for some time, you got a timer, and when this timer reaches 0, the current answer is going to be valid. And obviously, every time someone changes the answer, the timer is going to get reset. So in this case, Biden will be considered as the answer, and people who stake on the right answer, in this case Biden, are going to get the stake of people who stake on the wrong answer. So what is quite interesting there is that you have an oracle which is permissionless, like anyone can give answer to it. Most of the oracle system, you have a small set of actors, maybe something looking like a multisig, maybe 5 people max, who can give answer to questions, while here anyone can give the answer. And it's also an oracle which is subjective. You can ask any sort of question, subjective in the sense that it doesn't need to be something like price data. You can ask any sort of question. It's better if it's not completely, you don't ask a political question, for example. Like you cannot ask, should Trump win or should Biden win? That will be too subjective for it. But you can ask any sort of question which can be reasonably answered. And it's optimistic because most of the time you just have one person answering and the answer is going to be valid. So now let's go to the very hard cases, which seldom happen. I think we had those 2 times in the whole lifespan of the integration, which is when people are going to escalate and put more and more bonds. At some point, it becomes interesting to pay arbitration fees and call the arbitrator. At the beginning, it's not worth it, because at the beginning, when you only have 1 or 2 ETH, and if the arbitration fee are 3 ETH, you will lose more on the arbitration fees than what you were going to win by winning the question. But here, when deposits start to be higher, people have some incentive to call the arbitrator. So here, Alice is calling the arbitrator, and it's going to make a call to Kleros. And here, Kleros is going to rule that Biden won. And again, the Alice side is going to get the deposit of people who put on the Trump side. And fortunately, she will get more than what she paid in arbitration fees. So for people who don't know yet Kleros, we can give a quick recap. So it's an arbitration DAO. So when you have a dispute, we're going to draw some PNK, which are Kleros native tokens. And jurors who have staked with PNK are going to be eligible to vote. If you just ask people to vote, well, they will not really have much incentive to vote honestly. So for that, we have some incentives on what we call a shilling coin mechanism, which means that if you tend to vote coherently compared to final result, you tend to earn arbitration fees and tokens, while if you tend to vote incoherently, you tend to lose token. So here, Ignacy states that Trump won the election, so he lost a small amount of token, while the other, they got reward in PNK and ETH. So why would the juror end up answering the right answer? Because you don't really reward them for answering the right answer. You reward them for answering the same answer as the final result, which is slightly different. Let's look at this square. So imagine you have to pick the same square as the majority to get some reward. I'll let you 10 seconds to think about it. Okay, so what would you have chosen? A6, D4. So who would have chosen A6? A6? Well, who would have chosen D4? Who would have chosen anything else? So most of the people who have chosen, they chose A6 because here A6 stands out, while here because it's red. So in the case of Kleros, what stands out is the truth. And if people at the start, they tend to give truthful answer, then people in the future, because they want to be coherent with people and they're going to assume that other people are going to continue being truthful, they're also going to give truthful answers. So that's a bit of the idea behind a shilling coin mechanism. And the basic idea is that people who want to game the system, who will give random answers, because you could say they are lazy and they don't want to really look into the case, they will be on average less coherent than people who are honest and are going to look at the case. Same for people who will accept bribes or give answer because of, let's say, political opinion. Maybe someone is a Trump supporter and so say Trump won, while actually he didn't. So those people are going to lose money on average, while people who are honest are winning money on average. So even if you're a Trump supporter, if Trump lost, you still have incentives to report the result correctly that Biden won. So how does it look like in practice? So here is some screenshot of the Reality website where you have a question, which here was for fraud, about a football match. and people can answer on this website. But also, most of the time, applications using Reality and Kleros, they tend to have the question answering also integrated in their own front end. So most of the time, you don't need to go on an external website. You can, within the application, also answer the question, and it's connected directly to the Reality contracts. But that's also good because some people may not care about the underlying application and may just want to get some money by correcting people who are giving wrong answers, so they can look at everything on Reality. On the application, I think the historical application has been conditional tokens. So the idea behind conditional tokens is that you have an underlying asset, let's say, for example, DAI, which is worth $1. And then you can split it. So you ask a question, will Elon Musk step down as Tesla CEO? Yes and no. So now from your DAI, you have one DAI which is yes, Elon Musk will step down, and one DAI which is no, Elon Musk will not step down. And if you believe that Elon Musk will step down, well, you can sell the DAI no and keep the DAI yes. If Elon Musk steps down, the DAI yes is going to be redeemed for DAI, and the DAI no is going to be worthless. If Elon Musk doesn't step down, the DAI no will be redeemed for DAI, and the DAI yes will be worthless. And what is quite interesting is that you can do that on multiple levels. Now you have a DAI, yes, Elon Musk will step down. You can ask a second question, which would be, will the Tesla stock be higher than 300? And then now you end up having some token, which is going to be redeemed for a DAI if Elon Musk steps down and the Tesla stock is higher than $300. So by looking at the price of those tokens, you can get market-based probabilities on event happening and on conditional probabilities. You can say, okay, if Elon Musk steps down, we will have a high probability of the Tesla stock being high or not. And that can help you make informed decisions in governance, for example. So conditional tokens, for now, they are mainly to be used by people who are still tech-savvy. There is some front-end, but you have some projects using it. In particular, you have Omen. Unfortunately, they don't do nested condition, at least not yet. But that's, for now, being the application which has been, I would say, the biggest consumers of Reality plus Kleros disputes, as we got 2 large disputes on it, including one on the US election that I keep giving as an example, where you had multi-million dollars at stake in this prediction market. So that was a US election market. And it redeemed that yes, Biden won. And so people who had bought the yes side, and at the time it was only 81 DAI, then they would have made 19 cents of profit. And people who didn't would have lost. So that was why we got this US case that's actually escalated. So people escalated the bonds, and it ended up to Kleros, where someone pays the arbitration fees. Actually, the arbitration fees were quite high because it was drawing a large amount of juror. So you even had people crowdfunding together to pay the arbitration fees to send that to Kleros. And then you had a quite interesting dispute because it was done slightly after the election, where one side argued that Biden won the election. No one really argued that Trump won, but some people argue that this question was invalid because we could not really know. Like, both candidates declared to have won the election, and Trump was making legal challenges. So some people were arguing that the result could not be determined because no one was agreeing on the result between the two candidates. So Kleros juror had to rule, and in this case, they ruled that Biden won the elections. Or to be more specific, the actual question which went to arbitration was, will Trump win the election? And the answer was no. And you have some other question which was, will Biden win? And the answer was yes, and did not even go to arbitration. Here, the recent project connected to Kleros and Reality, which is Prod, which is a betting platform on sport and e-sport. So you can bet on football matches, e-sport matches, and that's made to be more of a more funny thing than to get information on probabilities, while I would say prediction markets are more focused on information, while here it's more for fun. And some people put tickets where they bet on different results of sport matches, and if they get it right, they get 1 point. And at the end, the people who manage to make the bet with the highest amount of points, then they're going to split a jackpot. And here, each of those questions, each of those matches is actually a reality plus Kleros question. And you get the 6-4 already are answered, and the other, they haven't been played yet. So they will be answered once they have been played. And well, the guy here is actually quite good because he got 6 out of 7 now. So probably on the good way to get the jackpot. So that's going to be all for this talk. And we're going to move to 1.5 minutes of questions.
All right, for our Q&A, any questions for Clément? Comments, musings, random thoughts, moments of inspiration. It looks like we have another. I think
Hello.
you left him speechless.
Hey, wait.
I have a question there.
Hi, Clément. How are you doing?
Oh, all right, spoke too soon.
What was the motivation for the fusion of the two projects?
Oh, it's not a fusion. We can go back there. So what I really like with crypto is that you don't need to be like one big company or one big project, but you can play with what I would call more of Legos. So you have different components. Here, like you have Kleros Vision Arbitrator, and it's not used just for reality, it's used for a bunch of different things. So you plug reality into Kleros, and the same, you can plug reality into something else, and you can plug something else into Kleros. So you have to see it more as some Lego, which can be connected. It's not like a project fusion, like we are completely like Edmond as a different entity. It's not projects which are fused. It's that projects are connected. Same for Crypto Unlock, Omen, Prod, the conditional token, which is from Gnosis. It's not fused. It's connected. So I believe that in the crypto space, that's how we can manage to maybe outcompete giants which are vertically integrated. We probably won't be vertically integrated, but because we will make application which have open execution that everyone can plug to, we're gonna, by taking the pieces of what a bunch of different people are doing, we're gonna be able to make systems which are gonna be better than vertically integrated Web2 giants. Yeah.
Any thoughts on or plans for either anonymous interactions with any of the voting routines, or otherwise kind of the opposite of that, which is weighting of votes based on some kind of reputation or history of prior votes?
So 2 questions. So first, anonymity. Anonymity of voting is not that hard. What tends to be harder is anonymity of fees and token redistribution. Because if you put the vote anonymous, but then you have to move the money, well, you can retro-engineer who voted what. So for now, it's not anonymous. We could potentially have module in the future doing that if you manage to make like complex ZK proof, which allow also to have to anonymize the transaction flux. But that's not as simple as just anonymous voting. And the other question was why not use reputation? So that's something which has been, I say, answered quite a long time ago. At least if you don't assume the existence of CB resistant system, we made Proof of Humanity, which is a CB resistant system. But if you don't assume that, and anyone can just create accounts, what people are going to do if you give reputation to those accounts, they're going to just wrap them into a multisig. Like they can use a Gnosis multisig, for example, and then they can sell those multisigs. So actually, you don't really get reputation, you get something that you can sell. So you end up with the similar economic as a token, except now only the bad or tricky guys are going to be able to sell their reputation, while the honest guys are not going to be able to. So that's quite a disadvantage to regular users. And there is also the argument made by Paul Stork in Trustcoin that if you want to exit the system and it's a reputation system, you don't want to be a juror anymore, your best way to monetize it is basically just to accept bribes. While if it's a sellable reputation, your best way to monetize it is to sell your token to someone else, and then that results to a better functioning of the system if you just sell your token instead of accept bribe to monetize your reputation that you don't care anymore. I think we are out of time.
Excellent.
Everyone. Oh, sorry.
A final thought.
Okay. I have extra time, thank you. Oh, I have? No. Oh, yeah, I have.
Thanks. It's been a while. I like seeing you on stage again. I like to think of arbitration as a form of knowledge production, and the way that you're using it to resolve markets, it's great. But have you experimented at all with academic journals or other sort of very contextualized subsets of professionals to sort of determine, what is authentic knowledge production and like what's fake knowledge production?
So I'm not sure I really got the question, but obviously we are working with some academics. We have 2 PhD and a lot of like people in the Fellowship of Justice where they are studying different topics related to Kleros. But Kleros by itself is a shilling coin system. So it's made with people having tokens. You don't, for example, give specific right to people because they are more knowledgeable or specialized. I don't think
I sort of mean it more like playing this arbitration game when it comes to like journal submissions.
You could do that. You could have a court about journal submissions. That's more of the content curation thing, not what I'm presenting today. But we have one of the large family of use cases that we call TCRs. And you have, a TCR of tokens, which is very specific. But then you have Curate, where everyone can create their own TCR from graphical interface. You don't even need to be a dev. So you could, for example, on Curate, make a TCR of journals. And the way it works there is you put an item, in this case that would be an article, you put a deposit where you vouch for this article to have followed the acceptable scientific process. So like, for example, if you do some prank, like what some people did with the dog park article, I don't know if that's what you refer to, then if you make some prank with this dog park article and someone finds out, they're going to challenge you, they're going to make evident that your research was basically bullshit or a joke, and they're going to lose their deposit.
Yeah, and I think when you have something like DeSci, right, where we have this interest in decentralized knowledge production in science, like we do need these kinds of primitives to determine the accuracy of the information that's being produced if it's outside an institutional context. So that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, but not that verifying if something fulfills some criterion is probably going to be working. But now, if you want to make some more subjective decision, like, is this article interesting? Is this article bringing a lot of new things to science? Kleros may be not too objective for that, while you may want to have more of a governance kind of system. Specifically, why? Because in governance, you may want to change the way you handle things across time, while in dispute resolution, that's the opposite. You want to handle the thing always the same way to give people predictability on what will happen. Like, you don't want the legal system to change all the time. However, you probably want to have the journal or criterion of acceptance change over time. So you don't want to prevent new kind of ideologies or practice to happen in journal curation, while you do want to prevent that in dispute resolution because you want people to know how their disputes are going to be handled. Thank you.
Excellent. Great presentation. And that was quite a robust Q&A session as well.